So always take out the GCF first. So 2 is going to go on the outside. Then we're left with x squared. What's 4x divided by 2? 2x. And what's negative 16 divided by 2? Negative 8. From here, we would just want to factor it normally. What are 2 factors of negative 8 that add to 2? 4 and negative 2. Awesome. So in our parentheses, we have x plus 4 and x minus 2. And then don't forget, if you took out a GCF in the beginning, you have to write it in your answer too. So our answer would be 2 times x plus 4 times x minus 2. All right, Chris. All right, let's do number 2. I'm going to write it on the side so we have more room here. We have 5x squared plus 21x plus 18. All right. So first thing we want to do is check and see if you have a GCF. Do we have a GCF? No. Nothing divides into 5, 21, and 18. So if we don't have a GCF, we have to multiply the first times the last. What is 5 times 18? Write it down. 18 times 5. 5 times 8 would be 40. Awesome. 90. Now we want to ask ourselves, what are 2 factors of 90 that add to 21? Let's go through our factors of 90. 1 and 90, 2 and 45. Doesn't work. 3 and 30. 4, does 4 go into 90? Nope. 5 and 18. 6 and 15. 9 and 10. Any of these add up to 21? 6 and 15. Awesome. So 6 and 15. 21, the number in the middle. So we have x plus 6 and x plus 15. Now when we start with multiplying times the first times the last, what do we have to remember to do? What do we do with the first number? Divide it. We divide both our numbers by the first one. So if you start by multiplying the first times the last, you have to remember to divide. What if it doesn't go in? Can I divide 6 by 5? No. What do I do with it? Put it in front of the x. So this would be 5x plus 6. And then can I divide 15 by 5? What's 15 divided by 5? So x plus 3. So this would be our answer. This is number 2. Any questions here? All right, let's do another. Let's look at number 3. Do we have a GCF that we could take out? Can I divide 63 by 4? Nope. So we have to multiply the first times the last. 4 times negative 63 would be negative, let's write it down, 63 times 4. 12. 4 times 6 plus 1 would be 25. So negative 252. So we need 2 factors of negative 252 that add to 4. So it's big numbers, but we can do it. Let's think. 252. We have 1 and 252. That doesn't work. 2 and 126 doesn't work. 3 goes into 25. 8 times, so 84. Maybe let's think bigger. Let's try 12. 12 goes into 252. Let's see. 12 goes into 25 twice with 1 left over. 12 and 21. What are we trying to add up to? 4. That doesn't work. Let's try 9. 9 goes into 25. How many times? Twice with 7 left over. And 9 goes into 72. How many times? 8. 9 and 28. Does that work? Nope. Let's try 14. 14 goes into 25 once with 11 left over. And 14 goes into 112. Let's check. Eight times, because 14 times 8 would be 112. Yeah. So 14 and 18. Does that work?
Yeah.
Which one's negative? The number in the middle is negative, so that means the bigger number has to be negative. So 14 and negative 18. So in our parentheses, we're going to put x plus 14 and x minus 18. Now, if we started with multiplying, what do we have to remember to do? Divide. We need to divide by 4. So we divide both of our numbers by 4. Can I divide 14 by 4? No, but we can simplify it. What goes into both 14 and 4? 2. So this would be 7 over 2. What do I do with the number on the bottom? Move it in front of the x. So this would be 2x plus 7, because 7 is now on the top. Now let's do the same thing for the second one. What goes into both 18 and 4? 2. So this would be 9 over 2. What do I do with the denominator? Move it in front of the x. So this would be 2x minus what? What's now on top? 9. So this would be our answer. How would we check our work? You could FOIL it. Any questions there? All right, let's do number 5. So for number 5, we have negative 9x squared plus 31x plus 20. So you guys have to do number 4 on your own. Let's do number 5. So if it starts with a negative, what's the first thing we have to do? Divide out the negative. We're going to take out a negative 1 and flip the signs of everything. So take out negative 1 and change the signs. So we have 9x squared plus 31x plus 20. Do I have a GCF here? Anything that divides into 9, 31, and 20? No. So since our leading coefficient is 9, what do we have to do to solve? What do we do to solve when our leading coefficient's not 1? What do we do? What do we do to solve when our leading coefficient, the first number, is not 1? What do we do in the last question and the one before that? Look at number 2. What do we do first? Multiply the first times the last. So 9 times 20 would be 180. What are 2 factors of 180 that add up to 31? Let's write out what multiplies to 180. We got 1 and 180, 2 and 90, 3 and 60. Remember, it's adding up to 31. Let's think a little bit bigger. We have 6 and 30. Close. Let's try 5. 5 goes into 18 how many times? 3. With 3 left over. Oh, I see what I did. With 3 left over, and 5 goes into 36 times. But I forgot to change the signs. I wrote it down, but I forgot to change. So these would be both be negative. So it multiplies to negative 180, but adds up to negative 31. Any of our options on the right side do we think work? 5 and 36, which one's negative? 36. Since our number in the middle is negative, the bigger number is negative. So we have x plus 5 and x minus 36. What do we have to remember to do next? If we start with multiplying, we have to remember to divide. So we're going to divide both of these by 9. Can I divide 5 by 9? Can we? No. So what do we do with the 9? Move it in front of the x. We have 9x plus 5. Can I divide 36 by 9? Yeah. So x minus what? 4. And then don't forget, what was my GCF that I took out in the beginning? -1. So we need that in our answer too. So if you take out a GCF, that goes outside of your parentheses. So when you take out a GCF, it just stays outside. This one, we took out a -1. We changed the signs on the inside. So that was number 5. Let's do number 6. So 6, we have 3x squared minus 6x minus 24. First thing we always want to ask ourselves, is there a GCF? What's our GCF here? Does anything go into both 3, -6, and -24? What do we think? 3. We can divide out of 3. So we take out a 3. What are we left with when we divide out of 3? X squared minus 2x minus 8. Now, what are 2 factors of -8 that add to -2? 4 and 2, but which one's negative? So if the sign in the middle is negative, it means the bigger number has to be negative. So -4. So what goes in our parentheses? X minus 4 and x plus 2. But don't forget, we took out a GCF in the beginning, so where does the GCF go? Out front. So if you take out a GCF, just put it in front of your answer. All right, let's do number 8. 7 has really big numbers when you multiply the first times the last. You can try your best with that one, or just do the rest of them in process of elimination with that one. Or you could use your answers and FOIL it out to see which one gives you that. The numbers will be a little bit smaller on the quiz, so don't worry about number 7. But let's do number 8. Oh, and on this one, you guys can ignore 11 through 15. Don't have to do these. (11 through 15). All right, so with number 8, we have -36x squared plus 30x plus 66. All right, what should we do first here, Chris?
Find your greatest common factor.
What is our greatest common factor? 6. But even better than just 6, what do we like our leading coefficient to be? Positive or negative? Positive. So let's take out a negative 6. We want to take out a negative with it to change the sign of our x squared. So it's negative 36 divided by negative 6. Negative 36 divided by negative 6. Positive 6. So 6x squared. 30 divided by negative 6. Negative 5x. And 66 divided by negative 6. Negative 11. Now what would we do to factor? Awesome. Multiply the first times the last. That negative 6 just stays outside. It hangs along for the ride once you take out the GCF. Now we're just looking inside the parentheses to factor. So 6 times negative 11 would be negative 66. What are two factors of negative 66 that add to negative 5? Write down your factors if you need to. 66. Got 1, 66, 2, 33. Awesome. 11 and 6. 11 and 6. Which one's negative? 11. It's negative 5, so it means the bigger number has to be negative. So here in our parentheses, we have x minus 11 and x plus 6. What do we have to do next? Divide by 6. So since we started with multiplying, we have to remember to divide. Can I divide 11 by 6? Nope. So what would our first parentheses be? 6x minus 11. Can I divide 6 by 6? What's our second parentheses going to be? X plus 1. What am I missing from my answer? The negative 6, the GCF that we took out in the beginning. So this would be our final answer. All right, so this one was number 8. You guys have to do 9 and 10 on your own. And 7. 7, just try your best because the numbers get really big for 7. And then also 4. Any questions here? Let's go to the next page, 7.7. So 7.7. So we're still factoring. Here we're factoring our special squares. So you're going to see a lot of perfect squares here. It's helpful to recognize perfect squares. So 1 squared would be 1. 2 squared is what? 4. What's 3 to the second power? 9. 4 to the second power? 16. 5 to the second power? 25. 6 to the second power? 36. 7 to the second power? 49. 8 to the second power? 64. 9 to the second power? 81. 10 to the second power? 100. 11 to the second power? 121. 12 to the second power? 144. 13 to the second power? 169. 14 is 196. And just for fun, 15 is 225. We can stop there. For this page, guys, listen up. This page you can skip 11 through 15. So you're just doing the first 10. All right, so for number 1, to factor difference of squares, when it's 2 terms, it ends up in 2 parentheses. What times what gives us x squared? What times what gives us x squared? X times x. And what times what gives us 36? 6 and 6. So this would be x plus 6 and x minus 6. Let's look at number 2. Let's think, what times what gives us 81? 9 and 9. And what times what gives us 25? 5. What times what gives us x? Or x squared? X. So 5x and 5x would be 25x squared. So what's going to go into our parentheses? 9 plus 5x and 9 minus 5x. In number 3, the first and the last term are perfect squares. What times what gives us x squared? X and x. What times what gives us 49? 7 and 7. So when it's a trinomial, when you have 3 terms, it's just one parenthesis squared. What do you think is going to go in the parentheses? X plus 7. Perfect. Now it's a plus because the sign in the middle has a plus. Questions here? All right, let's do number 4. What times what gives us 4x squared? 2x, 2x and 2x. What times what gives us 21? 121. 11 and 11. So what would go into our parentheses squared here? 2x minus 11. Awesome, because there's a minus in the middle. So 2x minus 11 squared. So notice the difference between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. When you have 2 terms, you end up with 2 sets of parentheses. So 2 terms. You get 2 sets of parentheses. 3 terms is 1 parentheses squared. I'm going to let you guys do 5 and 6 on your own. Let's look at 7. So 3x squared and 3 are not perfect squares. What's the first thing we want to ask ourselves when we do these questions? Think back from the last section we were doing, 7.6. What's the first thing we ask ourselves? GCF. Do we have a GCF here? 3. Let's take out a 3. When we divide both of them by 3, what are we left with? X squared minus 1. Awesome. Now, is x squared minus 1 the difference of squares? Is x squared a perfect square? And is 1 a perfect square? Yeah. So what times what gives us x squared? X and x. What times what gives us 1? 1, 1. So since we have 2 terms, we get 2 sets of parentheses. What's going to go in our parentheses? X plus 1 and x minus 1. And then don't forget the GCF that we took out in the beginning. So this would be our answer. Let's do number 8. We don't like it when our x squared term is negative out front. What do we have to do to make it positive? Divide out a negative 1. So we're going to take out a negative 1. What are we left with when we take out a negative 1? X squared. Is it still plus 144 when we divide it by negative 1? Minus 144. Is x squared and 144 both perfect squares? Yeah. So what times what gives us x squared? X and x. What times what gives us 144? 12 and 12. So what's going to go into our parentheses? X plus 12 and x minus 12. Awesome. What am I missing from my answer? The negative 1, the GCF that we took out in the beginning. All right, 9 is perfect squares. Let's look at 10. Is 18 a perfect square? No. And is 50 a perfect square? No. So what do you think we need to do first here? divide what? Do we have a GCF? Always ask yourself, is there a GCF? What number divides into both 18, 60, and 50? Are they all even numbers? Yeah, so what divides into all three of them? 2. But also, even better than just 2, negative 2, because we don't like it when our leading coefficient is negative. No, we saw that.
Okay.
So we're going to take out a negative 2. Negative 18x squared divided by negative 2 would be what? 9x squared. What's 60 divided by negative 2? Negative 30x. And what's 50 or negative 50 divided by negative 2? So plus 25. Now is 9x squared a perfect square? What about 25? So what times what gives us 9x squared? 3x and 3x. What times what gives us 25? 5 and 5. So what's going to go into our parentheses? Well, do we just have one set of parentheses or two here? One, because it's got 3 terms. So 1 parentheses squared, what's going to go in our parentheses? 3x minus 5. Awesome, minus, because we have a minus sign in the middle. What am I missing from my answer? The negative 2, the GCF that we took out in the beginning. So this would be our answer. So from this one, you guys have to do 5, 6, and 9 on your own.